In July 2024, after years of debate, competitive gaming has finally become an Olympic sport.
You have created the Olympic Esports Games. Congratulations and thank you very much.
But just 2 years before this glorious moment, esport was almost dead. From a struggling industry to the most hyped one ever, investors poured in billions, hoping to make some quick money. But then, the bubble popped, the hype died, and everyone thought esports could never come back. So the question is, how did esports manage to come back and become an Olympic sport after all this chaos? In this video, I'll cover the rise of esports, how it became an Olympic sport, and who stepped in to save an industry from dying. Did you know I used to play League of Legends? My go-to champion was Twitch, but I wasn't good enough, so now I'm doing YouTube instead. And in this video, I want to tell you, if you really want to understand esports today, we gotta go all the way back to 1998. Not so much with Britney's debut, but with StarCraft's same-year launch over in South Korea. High-speed internet and PC banks turned it into a national obsession. Back then, it wasn't about the money. It was all about the joy of watching others play. Whether it was StarCraft, Doom, Quake, or Unreal Tournament. And that's when esports exploded. New esports leagues popped up everywhere, sparking not just massive events, but also one of the best gaming anthems ever. It was the golden age of LAN parties, and I was blown away to learn that the first massive LAN party ever, the Gamers Gathering, actually took place in my hometown of Duisburg, Germany. I was like, total krass, as we would say in German. But something else was total krass as well. In 2007, back when Twitch was just in TV, the Championship Gaming Series hit the scene. It was televised, it had the largest prize pool ever, 50 million views, and $50 million in cash. It was so over the top, they even held a draft event at Hugh Hefner's Playboy Mansion. On paper, it was the ultimate payout, but things went south very fast, because the 2008 financial crisis hit. And then the league had to shut down. Teams and talents were left stranded, and investors saw that profitability was just too far in the future. To many, this marked the first setback for the industry, and people wondered if esports would ever recover. But on the other hand, esports made its debut in the Olympics over in Asia. The Olympic Council of Asia featured FIFA, NBA, and Need for Speed at the 2007 Asian Indoor Games. With millions of views, the International Olympic Committee would soon realize just how big esports would get. Meanwhile, over in the West, something else was happening. Streaming platforms and live service games. Justin TV became Twitch and also the #1 game streaming platform, and at the same time, Riot Games launched League of Legends and their first World Cup with a $100,000 prize pool. They even sold out famous sporting venues and landed big brand deals. But it still wasn't clear if esports was truly back. And on top, many still didn't see it as a legitimate sport.
Have you guys seen esports and the E-League? I don't know if that's sports.
So to grow, esports needed to amp up its image. And so it did, with Riot launching its second championship series. But this time, not with $100,000, but a $2 million prize pot. Slowly but surely it became pretty clear. Esports was back and worth watching. So in just a few years, esports went from this to this. It was the era of the esports golden summer, with rapid investment growth, real business models, training regimes, and even gaming towers and gaming houses. But there's always a but. But no one realized they were actually fueling a huge financial bubble that was about to burst. In 2016, Activision Blizzard releases OverWatch. At that year's BlizzCon, then CEO Bobby Kotick held a private meeting for a few of his billionaire friends from the sports business. And his pitch looked something like this. Launch an Overwatch League, kind of like the NFL but for gaming. Get the big money in through ticket sales, merch, sponsorships, and hot dogs. Get them crowds in through packed arenas and millions of views, just like in football. Oh, and let's not forget, let's charge a $20 million franchise fee for each spot. That was the pitch, and the media was asking if that was for real.
This is being touted as the next NFL compared to the Premier League of the future. Is that for real?
Yeah, that's our vision for how we're going to celebrate and reward our players, is build a league that is like the NFL, only global. And it's going to take some time, but what will make it really easy is having great partners like Robert Kraft.
This is Robert Kraft, owner of the New England Patriots and the first one to invest.
But we think this is a solid company, a great company, and we thought this OverWatch is the future.
And the future it was. In 2018, the OverWatch League finally launched as the largest esports event ever, with a traditional sports league model, city-based teams, and seasonal playoffs. And it did not take long before another player would join, Saudi Arabia, which invested $3.3 billion in Activision Blizzard that year. Now, with all that money pumped into esports, you might think it's booming. Just, it wasn't, because profits. They didn't want to show up. Investors threw money at it, hoping for quick returns, but the publishers got the numbers all wrong and fudged the truth. They pretended everything was fine when in fact everything was running at a loss. Showing images of packed stadiums and pushing incorrect headlines just kept investors in the dark. Soon, streaming deals dried up, sponsors walked away, and even some publicly traded esports org tanked. Numbers that couldn't be fudged anymore. And so came the reports, the angry articles, and even lawsuits accusing the publisher of rent-seeking behavior, creating economic injury to the league. And then, by the end of 2023, the league was officially declared dead. The financial bubble finally popped. The aftermath, you can imagine, layoffs across the board and deep disappointment at the publisher, especially with Bad Bobby. So to many investors, esports became a joke, a byword for bad investment. From the esports golden summer, it officially became the esports winter. All because of too little credibility and way too much hubris. Now, with no money and no credibility, how could esports ever recover from this? And who would step in to save it from dying? Well, in January 2024, Blizzard dropped some big news. A partnership with the world's leading esports company ESL Faceit to create the Overwatch Championship Series, a rebrand of the old league. But here was the twist. It meant partnering with Saudi Arabia. Because back in 2021, the kingdom scooped up ESL Faceit for $1.5 billion. The buying spree continued, of course, with stakes in Nintendo, Activision, Capcom, EA, Take-Two, and many, many more. It was a clear signal. Saudi Arabia was diversifying beyond its oil-rich economy. From golf to soccer and boxing, their plan to become the crown prince of sports and gaming was inevitable. And so, in 2022, the Saudi government launched the Gamers 8 tournament with a $15 million prize pool.
Welcome to the main stage here at Gamers 8. 6 weeks of this beautiful festival have concluded here in Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia.
But while the spectacle was going on, serious issues bubbled up just nearby. Only 20 miles away, a young woman faced 11 years in prison, a punishment from a secret Saudi tribunal for wearing yoga pants and posting feminist views on Snapchat. Back in 2019, she talked about radical changes in Saudi Arabia, feeling free to express herself thanks to promises from the crown prince. Yet, just a few years later, she was jailed for living those very freedoms. Esports teams and players were literally disgusted by everything, from death penalty over social posts to death penalty even for children. But some esports teams played along. Team Liquid, for instance. They criticized Saudi Arabia's human rights record, but couldn't turn down the cash either. And to appease the fans, they announced a $50,000 donation to charities, but also made very clear why they were still participating.
And truth be told, for better or worse, I do not see a path, or I do not see a future for an organization within esports to stay at the top tier and not participating in any of these events.
The community quickly called out their hypocrisy, but hypocrisy wasn't anything new. When Riot Games announced a partnership with Neom, Saudi's new tourist city, everyone lost it. The community, including a gay commentator, bashed Riot for the deal, especially after Riot had just celebrated Pride Month. The backlash was so fierce that within a week, Riot Games ended the NEOM deal. It was clear. Despite mixed feelings about the Middle East, the funds were just too enticing for esports teams to be turned down. And the man with the funds? Mohammed bin Salman, also known as Mr. Everything, as he literally controls everything. He promotes himself as a gamer.
You're a big gamer. Since I'm a kid, I love it. Really? Yeah, it disconnects me from reality.
And doesn't care what others think as long as it grows his GDP.
I don't care. I have 1% growth of GDP from sport, and I'm aiming for another 1.5%. Call it whatever you want. We're going to get that 1.5%.
With his involvement, esports recovered. But not without the other key player, the Olympic Committee. Under Thomas Bach's leadership, the committee became more open to esports. But despite the success at the Asian Games and strong arguments for why esports should be in the Olympics, the committee was still at odds with something: the violence in esports, which to the president was crossing a red line.
The glorification of violence or discrimination, this red line cannot be crossed by the Olympic movement.
Violence, eh? A rather hypocritical standpoint considering the Olympic Committee's own track record of corruption. While they preach fair play and respect human rights, they still select host countries notorious for human rights abuses. After choosing China as the host country in 2022, insiders realized that the Olympics are just easier in dictatorships. In a hearing titled China Genocide in the Olympics, the Human Rights Commission criticized the committee for continuously selecting corrupt host countries, including China. But violence or not, the Olympic Committee had a problem: declining viewership. And so, what they did next would pretty much turn into a joke.
The first ever Olympic Esports Week has officially kicked off in Singapore. Over the next 3 days, spectators can catch more than 100 esports athletes competing across 10 sports.
Except these weren't our usual esports games. During the Olympic Esports Week, the committee did try hard, but totally missed the mark.
We have advanced to that level. So the esports games are going to be archery, baseball,
chess, cycling, dance, motorsport, sailing, tennis, and
taekwondo. Basically, the Olympics will now be played on a Nintendo Wii. That's right. There's no Mortal Kombat, there's no Counter-Strike, there's no League of Legends, there's nothing. It's Wii Sports.
Yeah, so with the Saudis and the Olympic Committee in the mix, esports started getting some buzz. But with all this chaos, making it a legit Olympic sport was still far off. What it really needed was someone who could fix it, and fix it quickly. So, Saudi Arabia launched the Esports World Cup. 8 weeks of competition, 1,500 players, and a prize pool of $60 million. The biggest in esports history. The marketing? Over the top, filled with dazzling ads and promotions promising the most intense gaming experience. The World Cup turned Riyadh into an epicenter of esports fandom, and teams celebrated their victories. But not just teams were celebrating, sponsors were too. The ones that backed out during the esports winter, they were all crawling back. And so apparently the winter was thawing, so much so that even Riot Games confirmed its participation. At the same time, Saudi Arabia also partnered with the Esports Awards to bring it exclusively to Riyadh. But at this point, the community really went berserk. Members stepped down and resigned from the panel, others declined working at the World Cup, and some even retired from playing in tournaments altogether. Everyone just slammed the Saudis for being a dystopian monopoly with corporate malpractice, and that there was no going back now. British esports journalist Richard Lewis, he put it very, very bluntly.
If we'd stop blowing VC money and lying to the VC investors for 2 decades, if we'd stop lying to sponsors for 2 decades, we actually would have built something that we wouldn't need to sell.
But the sellout wasn't over. While all this was going on, the Olympic Committee noticed Saudi Arabia's rise and involvement in esports, and they realized something.
If we want to continue to inspire the next generations with our Olympic values, then we have to go where the young people are. We have to go to esports.
And so, knowing that esports was hungry for the Olympics and the Olympic Committee was hungry for viewership, the Saudis made a move that would change the game forever.
With your vote, you have created the Olympic Esports Games. Congratulations and thank you very much, and also congratulations to our friends and partners from the Saudi National Olympic Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to the IOC members. Thank you very much.
A historic milestone. For the next 12 years, Saudi Arabia will be the host for the Olympic Esports Games. Which games will be competing hasn't been announced yet, but to many, this was already yet another disgusting decision by the Olympic Committee. Many stated that it wasn't esports that needed the Olympics, but the other way around. The backlash across channels was yet again loud and clear. And so is the hypocrisy, loud and clear. It's just tough to see the industry celebrate Pride Month and then cozy up with those who go against everything it stands for. So, what's next for esports? While the top dogs glowed and young gamers chased dreams of becoming esports athletes, few realized just how fragile the industry still is. And with two corrupt powers in control, esports may have reached the top, but at what cost? Its community spirit, its soul, its authenticity, the very things that made it cool in the first place? I'm not sure. But one thing is for sure, that all that glitters is not gold after all. Happy gaming. Let me get good again at this. Oh, maybe not.